Okay, imagine this. You're running a busy healthcare clinic. You put the effort into Google Ads, things are ticking along, and you're finally getting consistent patient bookings. It feels good, right?
Uh-huh.
That machine is working.
Yeah, humming along nicely.
Exactly. And then someone brings up changing the website. Maybe it's a redesign, maybe moving to a new platform. But critically, it involves changing the web addresses, the URLs for those landing pages your ads point to.
Mm-hmm.
And that immediate question pops into your head. Is this going to mess everything up? Is it going to tank my results?
And looking at the material we've got here, the short answer is yes. Absolutely. It can have a huge impact on your Google Ads performance, probably much more than you'd think at first glance.
Right. So that's what we're diving into today. We want to really pull apart why changing those landing page URLs causes such problems for Google Ads using the insights from this article. And more importantly, give you some, smart strategies for healthcare clinics to actually navigate these changes.
Without completely sinking your patient bookings in the process.
Exactly. And we'll also touch on those hidden costs that aren't just about ad spend, the ripple effects through the whole practice.
Yeah, the real world impact.
Okay, so let's start with the problem itself. Why is changing a URL such a big deal for Google Ads, even if the page looks identical?
Well, the fascinating thing is how Google's system works. It's not static. It's learning constantly. Its machine learning algorithms spend months, sometimes even longer, figuring out user behavior.
Learning what works.
Precisely. They learn that, say, Mrs. Johnson from Kensington, when she searches for osteopathy on a Tuesday, she's really likely to book if she lands on this specific page URL. Or maybe young professionals down in Canary Wharf, they convert on your dental cleaning ads after seeing them during their commute, but specifically when they hit that particular booking page URL.
So it's not just about the page content, it's about the address itself having this history baked in.
Exactly. The algorithm builds this incredibly detailed understanding tied directly to that specific URL. So when you change it, even if it's just adding a hyphen or changing one word, even if the page looks exactly the same to a human, Google system sees a totally new page. It's essentially like you're telling it, okay, forget all that data you collected about who converts on the old address. You need to start learning all over again for this new one.
Start from zero.
Pretty much, yeah, in terms of its understanding for that specific destination.
And the source material has a really clear example of this, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Dr. Sarah Chen's private GP practice, she moved her booking system, which meant her main booking URL changed. It went from something standard like book appointment to schedule consultation.
Okay.
And the results were fast and pretty painful. Within just 2 weeks, her cost per patient acquisition through Google Ads jumped by 35%.
Wow.
And her overall online bookings dropped by 28%. That kind of immediate hit is really disruptive for any clinic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that ties into those hidden costs you mentioned earlier. It's not just the ad metrics changing.
No, not at all. Think about it from the clinic's perspective. Your cost to get a new patient suddenly skyrockets because Google's, well, it's kind of fumbling around trying to relearn who converts. And bookings can just plummet. The article suggests drops anywhere from 20% up to 60% during that transition.
60%. And while that's happening, your competitors are probably picking up the slack, right? Grabbing those patients you're missing.
Exactly. They're benefiting from your disruption. And then internally, think about staff schedules. Suddenly they're unpredictable because patient volume is fluctuating wildly, cash flow gets harder to forecast, it affects the whole operation.
And this isn't a quick fix, is it? Google doesn't just figure it out again overnight.
No, definitely not. The data we're looking at suggests it can take anywhere from 30 to 90 days, sometimes even longer for campaigns to really recover and get back to where they were performing before the URL change. That's, 1 to 3 months of potentially reduced performance.
That's a long time to be operating below par. Okay, so it definitely sounds like a major challenge if you rely on Google Ads. But the good news is the material does offer some ways through this, some practical strategies.
That's right. It outlines 3 pretty smart approaches specifically for healthcare practices to try and minimize this risk when they need to make website changes.
Okay, let's break down that first one.
So the first is called the controlled A/B test method. The main idea here is you test a new landing page, maybe on a new platform or with a new design, but you do it using separate ad groups and you carefully control the timing.
Okay, how does that work in practice? How would you set that up?
You keep your existing ad group, the one that's working well, running exactly as it is, pointing to the current landing page URL. Then you duplicate that ad group, create an exact copy,
Right.
And the only thing you change in that duplicated group is the final URL. You update that to point to the new page you want to test.
So you have the original pointing to the old page, the copy pointing to the new one. How do you stop them interfering with each other?
That's the control part. You use ad schedules. So maybe the original ad group runs Monday to Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., and the test ad group runs Thursday to Saturday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., different times. Or, even better, you can use Google Ads' own campaign experiments feature. It's built for this kind of side-by-side testing and gives you a cleaner split of the traffic.
And why is separating them like that so critical?
It really helps minimize the machine learning interference. Google's algorithm gets a clearer picture of how users behave on each separate page during distinct, comparable time slots. It allows for a much more reliable comparison of which page is actually performing better.
Makes sense. And the article even gives a handy prompt for talking to your developer about this, right?
Yeah, it suggests framing it clearly. Like,
Yeah.
hey, can you clone our current booking page but host it at a new URL, say new book appointment? We need to keep the original live. We're going to split traffic using separate ad groups, probably with different time schedules or maybe a campaign experiment, so we can validate which page actually drives more bookings. It states the need and the reason.
Very practical. Okay, what's the second strategy?
This one's the incremental update approach. The whole philosophy here is make improvements, but make them directly on your existing landing page, the one Google already knows and likes, and crucially, don't change the URL.
So keep the address the same to keep all that learned data intact.
Exactly. You hang on to all that valuable conversion history that the algorithm has painstakingly associated with that specific URL.
What kinds of changes fit this approach? You can't do a massive redesign this way, presumably.
No, not a huge overhaul, but think about adding things that build trust. Maybe embedding your CQC badge prominently, adding real patient testimonials or reviews, maybe showcasing some clinic awards. You could also make, minor design tweaks, button colors, maybe slight layout adjustments, or refining the text, the messaging to be clearer, things that enhance, not replace.
And the key is doing these things one step at a time.
Definitely. The recommendation is to roll out just one significant change per week. Then you watch your key metrics, bounce rate, conversion rate, time on page. See what impact that single change had. Did adding those reviews help? Did tweaking the headline make a difference?
So you isolate the impact and the prompt for the team here.
It's about focus. Something like, okay, team, let's improve our current booking page. This week, the focus is adding those verified patient testimonials. Next week, perhaps we integrate the awards section and that short intro video. The main thing is we do these incrementally on the existing URL. No URL changes for now.
Got it. Okay, strategy number 3, the risk-minimized redesign plan. This sounds like the one for when you really do feel a bigger change is needed.
Yes, exactly. If a major page redesign is genuinely necessary, the absolute goal is to test that new design thoroughly before you even think about making it the live landing page for your ad.
How do you test it safely then?
You build the new design, but you host it on a completely separate, distinct URL. Like the first strategy, you then use a duplicate ad group or a campaign experiment to send traffic there.
Right.
And you carefully manage that traffic flow using scheduling or campaign rotation settings so that you're sending a controlled portion of your ad traffic to the new URL, but making sure there's no overlap. The same users aren't seeing both versions in the test.
And then you just watch the numbers.
For a decent period. The article suggests 4 to 6 weeks is usually needed to get reliable data. You compare everything, cost per conversion, bounce rate, and crucially, the actual number of patient bookings coming from the old page versus the new design.
And the golden rule is?
Only make the switch if the data clearly, unequivocally shows the new design performs better, if it performs the same or worse.
Stick with what you know works.
Exactly. You haven't wrecked your existing performance. You can refine the new design based on the test data, or just stick with the tried and tested page.
What would the team instructions sound like for this one?
More along the lines of, okay, let's get the new landing page design live on a test URL. We'll set up an experiment in Google Ads to send, say, 20% of our traffic there during off-peak hours initially. We need to collect solid comparison data over the next month before we even consider making this the default page.
These all sound like sensible, data-driven approaches. But the material also raises some serious red flags, doesn't it? certain changes that are just inherently risky.
Oh, absolutely. It issues a strong warning. Some changes are so fundamental they carry a very high, often unavoidable risk to your Google Ads performance. You should really only consider them if it's absolutely essential, and you need to be prepared for the consequences.
So what are these big danger zones?
Well, migrating your entire website platform, say, moving from Squarespace to WordPress or vice versa,
Hmm.
or to a custom build that often leads to initial performance drops of 30 to 50%.
Wow.
Just changing the path in a URL, like simplifying urology services down to just urology, that simple change can cause an initial traffic loss for that specific service of 50 to 70% while Google figures it out.
70% just for changing the path.
Initially, yeah, it can be that severe. The biggest impact, though, is usually changing your entire domain name, moving from, yourpractice.co.uk to newpracticename.com. That's huge. You could be looking at 60 to maybe even 90% traffic loss at the start.
90%.
This
It's practically starting over.
It's incredibly disruptive, and also just launching a complete page redesign without doing any of that testing we just talked about,
Huh?
that's also listed as high risk, often results in 40 to 70% fewer bookings coming from that page, at least initially.
And I guess trying to do several of these things at once is the ultimate nightmare scenario.
Absolutely the worst thing you can do. The article shares this cautionary tale, this sort of red flag scenario. A dental practice in London. They decided to change their domain name, completely redesign their main booking page, and switch to a new back-end booking system, all in the same week.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
I can guess how this ends.
Yeah. Predictably disastrous. Their Google ads basically just stopped working effectively. For 2 whole months, they generated virtually no new patients from their campaigns. The impact was so severe, the article mentions they came close to actually having to shut down the practice.
Good grief.
Mhm.
That really drives home how interconnected this all is and how high the stakes are.
It really does.
But it's not all doom and gloom. There's a positive story in here, too, an example of getting it right.
Yes, thankfully. The material highlights Dr. Michael Roberts and his physiotherapy clinic in Hammersmith. His challenge was a common one. He needed to add online payment functionality to his booking process.
Okay, which again sounds like something that could easily trigger a big website project.
It could have, yeah.
Mm.
But Dr. Roberts took a different path, one that really mirrors that incremental strategy we discussed. Instead of a rebuild or messing with his main booking page URL, he focused specifically on adding the payment feature to his existing page, keeping the URL the same.
Right.
Then, over about 6 weeks, he made a few other small design tweaks, rolling them out gradually, one by one.
And how did that measured approach affect his Google ads?
He watched his cost per booking metric like a hawk. The result: his campaign performance only saw a small temporary dip of about 12%. And crucially, it fully recovered within just 3 weeks.
That is worlds apart from the other examples. So the key lesson from his success.
It really underscores the value of restraint and focus, doesn't it? He resisted that common urge to fix everything at once or launch something big and shiny. He identified the core need, adding payments, and implemented just that incrementally on the page that Google's algorithm already understood and trusted. He respected the data.
That's a powerful lesson. Okay, let's switch gears slightly. The source material also pulls out some common questions clinics have around this whole topic, like a quick FAQ section.
Yeah, very practical questions that you'd likely ask if you were in this situation.
First one. Your web developer is really excited about the new site they're building. They promise it's going to convert much better. Can you just trust them and go for it?
Ah, the classic question. And the guidance here is pretty firm. Always test first. Look, your developer is likely brilliant at building websites, but predicting exactly how your specific audience, driven by your specific Google ads, will react to a brand new page is really hard.
Even for experts.
Even for experts. The material notes that even seasoned professionals get conversion predictions wrong maybe 20–30% of the time. Your current page, however flawed you think it is, has proven conversion data linked to its URL in Google's system. Don't throw that away based on a prediction. Validate the new design with real traffic first.
Makes sense. Okay, next question. If you do make a URL change, how long should you realistically expect performance to be down?
It really depends on how big the change is. For a minor URL tweak, maybe expect a dip for about 2 to 4 weeks. For more significant changes, like a major section rename, you might be looking at 6 to 12 weeks. And for those complete redesigns involving new URLs, it could take 8 to 16 weeks, so 2 to 4 months, for performance to fully stabilize and recover.
Wow, okay. Is there anything at all you can do to speed up that recovery process, make Google learn faster?
Honestly, not really. Google's algorithms need two things: time and sufficient conversion data coming through the new URL. There's no magic wand to accelerate that learning process. So the best strategy isn't trying to speed up recovery after the fact, but using those testing and incremental approaches we talked about to minimize the disruption before it happens.
Right. Prevention is better than cure.
Right.
What about the scenario where a domain change is absolutely unavoidable? Maybe a practice merger or a complete rebrand?
If changing your domain name is genuinely the only option, you have to go in with your eyes wide open and a solid plan. First, budget for a major hit to bookings, potentially that 60 to 90% drop from maybe 2 or 3 months right at the start. Yeah. The source suggests considering, if your budget allows, temporarily increasing your ad spend during that period. The idea is to try and force more volume through the system to gather data faster, even if conversions are inefficient initially. But most importantly, you absolutely need a robust cash flow plan to weather that storm of reduced income.
That sounds critical.
Hmm.
Okay, final FAQ point. Should you just pause your Google Ads altogether during a big website migration or redesign to avoid wasting money while things are potentially broken or underperforming?
Generally, the advice is actually no, don't pause the ads completely. It seems counterintuitive, maybe.
A little.
But the recommendation is to keep the campaigns running. Just monitor them incredibly closely. Pausing introduces yet another variable. When you switch them back on later, the algorithms might be even more confused, potentially drawing out the recovery period. It's usually better to keep the data flowing, manage the bids and budgets carefully through the transition rather than hitting stop and then start again.
Okay, that's useful context. So bringing this all together, what's the fundamental takeaway for healthcare clinic directors navigating this digital landscape?
I think the core message is crystal clear. Google Ads isn't just a marketing channel anymore. For many clinics, it's a critical operational component. And understanding the true cost, not just in pounds or dollars, but in patient flow, staff time, competitive positioning of changing your landing page URLs is absolutely essential for making smart, sustainable decisions.
It really comes down to appreciating the value of that data Google has painstakingly built up for your specific pages.
Exactly. You have to remember, Google's system has potentially spent months, maybe years, learning exactly which people searching in your area are most likely to click your ad, land on that specific page, and actually book an appointment. That learned intelligence is incredibly valuable.
So the final advice from the source material is pretty straightforward.
Treat that data with the respect it deserves. Don't just discard it lightly.
This has been really insightful. It's clear that for any clinic director using Google Ads, changing a landing page URL isn't just some minor technical update. It's a strategic decision with potentially significant consequences for the patient pipeline you've worked so hard to build.
Absolutely.
So that careful planning, the testing, the phased rollouts we talked about, they aren't just nice to haves, they seem absolutely essential to protect your performance and keep those bookings stable.
They really are. And maybe one final thought to leave you with. Try to think about your Google Ads conversion data not just as numbers on a dashboard or, some abstract algorithm. Think of it as representing the machine's accumulated understanding of real people in your local community. People actively looking for the specific health you offer who've shown they're likely to convert on that page. When you change a URL without that careful strategy, you're not just changing a web link. You're effectively, if temporarily, erasing that sophisticated understanding of who needs you and where they connect with you. Protecting that learned behavior should probably be considered almost as important as protecting patient confidentiality itself. It's that valuable to the health of your practice.